الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب.
Assalamu alaikum, Umar. How are you? So today is part number what?
9.
And that's the last? That's the last part. And in this part, we are going to discuss the factor, means the last factor that in this series is living in the present. That one, how living in the present gives us peace and tranquility. And number two, actually how to live in the present. That's a challenge for us. We cannot easily live in the present, right? So how do we divide time when we think about time?
Past, present, and future.
It's past, present, and future. When you think about the past, although we have some sweet memories as well, but they also make us feel bad, right? Because we usually feel very frustrated in the present. Frustrated. So we feel frustrated in the present, and that's why even our sweet memories make us cry, right? So mostly we feel sorrow about the past, and then we are extremely anxious. We are extremely anxious about the future. So either we are extremely hopeful, we have lots of hope, and we think that all of the happiness that we have missed in the past or present, all that happiness is sitting somewhere in the future coming our way. One. Number two, that we pin so much hope in the future when the future comes, and that happiness doesn't come with it, right? We feel frustrated. But most importantly, either we are too anxious about the future or we are too afraid. Remember Michael Mosley? He was extremely afraid of the future, right? He would always think about negative things about the future. So that's why we are anxious about the future. And the reason that we feel so sorry about the past is that in the present, if a calamity befalls us or something goes wrong, right, then we blame ourselves for whatever we had done in the past. We think that if we had not done such and such, or we had done such and such, then we would have avoided that problem, that issue, right? So then that leads to regret. And regret is what? Regret is what? It's a
Punishment.
form of punishment, right? So we start punishing ourselves, right? And then that actually doesn't give us an opportunity to learn some lessons. So we don't learn any lesson from the problem that we are currently having, or the problems we are having because of our actions in the past. So that's not a productive way of living life. But this anxiety is part of our nature, right? So our Creator tells us that He has created man as anxious, right? And how is that in Arabic in the Quran? Innal insana khuliqa haluwa, that we have created man as anxious, and that's our anxiety. So we constantly live in the future, right? So we spend most of our life, we are in the present, but on our mind everything is in the future. For example, to take your example, right? You were in elementary school a few years ago, right? So what were your thoughts at that time?
To be like the senior kids.
Like to be in grade 5 or whatever, right? So then when you became the senior most kid in the school, and now you are grade what? Grade
9.
Grade 9. So now what are your thoughts?
To get a driver's license and drive.
What? And drive what? GTR. That was in our first video. So when you get to that age to get a car, that will be the time when you'll be thinking about having a job, right? But then you'll have a job, and then you'll be thinking about getting married, right? And when you get married and you have kids like this, right? Then what would happen is that you'll be thinking like me about your retirement, that you'll retire and then you'll have free time and then you'll do whatever you want to do, things like that, right? So this shows that we are perpetually living in the future, although we are in the present. But even when the future comes, there's the present, we are still thinking about the future. But that type of living actually has several problems. Their approach to living life in the future mostly has several problems, and let's list those problems. Right, so let's first discuss the problems, and then we'll get to the solutions as well. So problem number one is that tomorrow is not guaranteed, right? So we could be here now, and after a few moments we might not be here. We might not be here tomorrow, right? So tomorrow is not guaranteed. So if you start worrying about tomorrow, that's useless, right? So we can plan and prepare, but if we start worrying, that's the negative aspect of it, right? Or if we pin too much hopes on tomorrow and don't enjoy the blessings and the benefits and the good things that we have today, then that's not helpful either. Number two, if we continually live in the future, that makes us do things which might not be permissible, halal, or we might get into some crimes. For instance, if we are too worried about not having enough wealth in the future, or worry about poverty in the future, then what would happen is that would make us do something negative, something which is not halal, something which is haram, or something which is absolutely crime, right? And so we'll commit that crime, or we'll do some haram, which might be legal, but that won't be halal, right? So we will get into something wrong because of the fear of something negative happening in the future. So that's why we need to avoid that, and it's in the Quran as well, that ash-shaytanu yu'iddukum al-faqra, that Satan would make you afraid of poverty, وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ, and entice you into doing things which are immoral, right? And the third problem with living in the future is that you make shortcuts, right? So if you have pinned so many hopes in the future, you'll try to find out a shortest way to get there, right? So you must have heard from some of your fellow students that who can wait for studying for so long, 10, 12 years of study, and then you get a job, and then you make just this much money. Why don't you find out some shortcut and make some huge amount of money today, right? So that type of shortcut. So if you are pinning so much on the future, then you might do something, find a shortcut that might lead into committing some crimes or do other negative things, right? The fourth problem with living in the future is that it kind of ensures depression in the future, right? So you have so many hopes that I'll do this and I'll do that, and then this would happen, that would happen, and happiness is there in the future, right? Then the future arrives, and then you don't have that level of happiness that you are anticipating, and then depression is your destiny, right? And so depression becomes your destiny. And the last thing that I would like to mention is that it makes us miss what we have in the present, right? So we have plenty of blessings. We just don't count our blessings, right? And so instead of enjoying those blessings and be thankful for this and have a happy life right now, right? What we do is looking to the future for happiness. Then we miss out those opportunities today, right? And we live a miserable life in the present, right? So the solution for this is that we don't know what the tomorrow holds for us, right? But what we know for sure is that who holds tomorrow. So Allah holds tomorrow. So one thing that we need to keep in mind is that although we don't know what tomorrow holds for us. But what we do know is that Allah holds tomorrow, and He won't do anything negative to you, right? So whatever negative happens to us, it's in the Quran, right? Whatever negative happens to us, that's because of our own deeds, right? So that's why we need not to worry about future too much. We should focus on the present and not do something that would create some problems and issues for us tomorrow, right? So instead of worrying about the problems in the future, right, we should worry about today so that we don't do anything negative that would have negative consequences down in the future. And number two, one is that Allah holds tomorrow. So when you say that Allah is holding tomorrow for us, then we need to trust in Him and His judgment, right? So we need not question His judgment. If something happened despite our efforts, despite doing our best, then that's from Him, right? We shouldn't be questioning His judgment, right? Number three is that prepare and leave. Prepare and leave to Allah, right? Do you remember that story that a Bedouin came and he didn't tie his camel? So what happened? Just tell me that story quickly.
Prophet Muhammad told him, "Why didn't you tie your camel?" And the Bedouin said that he puts his trust in Allah.
So yeah, so he didn't tie his camel, and he said that he's leaving it to Allah, right? And then what did the Prophet say?
He said, tie it and then trust in Allah.
He said that tie it first, tie your camel first, and then leave it to Allah. So it means that you have to do all that you can, give it your best, right? And then leave it to Allah. And then if whatever you planned to do and it didn't happen that way, then consider it as the will of Allah and accept it, right? And then the fourth one, which is the most important one, is, what is this? Insha'Allah, right? So one of the basic teachings of Islam is that you don't say anything that I'll do this for sure tomorrow or the day after tomorrow or next year without saying Insha'Allah, right? And what does it mean?
If Allah wills.
If Allah wills, right? So we don't know about tomorrow, right? That what would come tomorrow. All that we can do is plan, but leave it to Allah. So when you leave it to Allah, then you say that Insha'Allah, that if He wills, then this would happen, and if He doesn't will, then it will not happen, right? In the Quran, in Surah Kahf, that's been specifically mentioned for saying Insha'Allah. وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. So the Quran specifically says that never say about anything, behold, I shall do this tomorrow, without adding Insha'Allah. And it's linked to what we can consider as a whole framework about time in Islam. So I'm going to explain that so that you never forget that how would you actually live in the present, right? So the question is that how do we live in the present, and how that gives us some contentment, right? So let's clean this and then we'll discuss that.